The message came through Marlene, our cousin who, bless her heart, still tries to play peacemaker in a family full of silent wars. She said Jasper wanted to invite me to dinner. Just a small gathering, she added like an afterthought. He didn't text or call himself. Typical. I almost didn't go. The last time I saw Jasper, he acted like I was background noise at our aunt's funeral. But a part of me still wants peace. Not with him, maybe, but with myself. To know I tried. So I said yes. His house looked more like a boutique hotel than a home. It sat behind a wrought iron gate, trimmed hedges too perfect to be real. A valet opened my door before I could even cut the engine. I smiled, mumbled a thank you. He barely nodded. Inside, the air smelled like money. Imported wine in crystal glasses, walls lined with artwork that probably had names. I wore a navy blouse I'd ironed twice, and still felt like I showed up to a masquerade in a paper mask. Callie greeted me at the door with a smile sharp as glass. "Oh, you made it," she chirped. It sounded like customer service, the kind where the employee's already clocked out in her head. Her hug was perfunctory. Her eyes scanned the room before she let go. They were all there, Jasper's people, investors, lawyers from downtown, women with tight smiles and hair that didn't dare frizz. They barely glanced my way. I became the invisible woman in my own bloodline. Dinner was served in their marble dining room, under a chandelier that probably cost more than my car. Jasper took center stage like always, spinning tales about his latest acquisition, something about a startup in Atlanta that tripled in valuation overnight. "Easy money," he said with a wink, like fortune followed him around like a loyal dog. He used words like liquidity and Series A and exit strategy. It wasn't conversation. It was performance. The kind that makes you feel small without him ever raising his voice. I tried to interject, said something about my law firm. Small-time personal injury, nothing fancy, but mine. "Oh," he said with a grin. "You still chasing ambulance cases?" Polite laughter. I forced a smile, the kind that sits on your face like wet clothes. I should have walked then, but I didn't. The talk shifted to the country club. Jasper described a new cigar lounge they were building. Mahogany panels, imported leather. "Real exclusivity," he said. Then it happened. He turned to me, smirking. "But you wouldn't know. You can't even afford the membership fee." The table went quiet. You could hear the fork someone set down, slow and awkward. Someone chuckled. Then another, nervous. Polite. Like they didn't want to pick sides. I swallowed hard. "You know," I said, light as air, "some of us value different kinds of investments." He just kept smiling. Eyes gleaming like a kid pulling wings off a fly. I excused myself. Said I had an early meeting. No one tried to stop me. Driving home, the road blurred. Not from the rain, from tears. I hadn't cried like that in years. Not because of what he said, but because I let him say it. And I sat there again. At home, I stood in the dark kitchen, holding onto the counter like it could ground me. My phone buzzed. Voicemail. Jasper. His voice was light, smug. "Hope you didn't take that too hard, sis. Just teasing. You know how I am." I replayed it, once, then again, 5 times total. Each time, something inside me tightened. It was never about money. It was never about clubs or wine or leather chairs. It was always about power. I thought of every birthday he skipped, every time he pretended not to hear me speak, every backhanded compliment he dressed up as brotherly banter. This wasn't teasing. This was pattern. That night, I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling until the sky turned gray. Something shifted. Broke. I wasn't angry. I was done. Done pretending he could hurt me only if I let him. Done laughing along. Done making myself small so he could feel big. I got up, made coffee, checked my calendar. The silence in my house felt different that morning. Less lonely. More clear. And just as I sat down to open my laptop, my phone rang. Unknown number. But I answered. And that call changed everything. I didn't sleep. Not really. I laid there with my eyes closed, but my mind wouldn't shut off. Jasper's voice kept circling, that smug, condescending smirk practically echoing in my ears. By the time dawn broke, I was already out of bed. The floor of my apartment creaked under my bare feet, each board reminding me this wasn't the polished marble of Jasper's world. I poured myself coffee in a chipped mug with a faded quote, "Strong women build each other up." It felt ironic. Emails buzzed on my phone, all routine. Court notices, newsletters, nothing that mattered. I stared at Jasper's voicemail again. Still unopened. Still there, like a dare. Dad used to say, "The loudest room isn't always the wisest one." This morning, that phrase hit different. The humiliation I'd swallowed last night was still there, but now, something else simmered underneath it. Not just shame, but anger. And not the chaotic kind. No. This was quiet, focused. I wasn't going to be their joke anymore. Not silently, not passively. I was done pretending. I was halfway through packing my work bag when my phone rang. No name, just a Georgia number I didn't recognize. I let it buzz twice before answering. "Zadie Harris?" the voice asked. Male, calm, southern drawl, but clipped. "Yes, this is she." "My name is Miles Turner. I'm the general manager at North Ridge Country Club. Apologies for the early hour, but I need to speak with you regarding your account." My brow furrowed. "My what?" "Your account with our club. There's been a recent audit of our founding sponsorships and—" "You must be mistaken," I interrupted. "I've never been a member there." A pause, then firmly, "According to our records, you are." I gripped the edge of the kitchen counter. The ceramic mug clinked against the laminate. "That's impossible," I muttered. "I understand this is unexpected," he continued. "But your name appears on a founding family sponsorship record from 12 years ago. It seems the dues were prepaid by a third party, but the membership was never activated under your name." A cold rush ran through me. 12 years ago. Dad was still alive. I cleared my throat. "Can you send me that record?" "Of course. I'll scan and email it within the hour." The call ended. I just stood there, staring into the nothingness of my living room, the hum of the refrigerator the only sound. When the email came, I opened it with trembling fingers. And there it was, a scanned document, aged and yellowed. My father's signature at the bottom, his handwriting in the memo line. "For Zadie, she belongs here." My breath caught. For a moment, I forgot where I was. It all clicked. All those times Jasper made it sound like I didn't belong. He knew. He'd always known. He just never said a word. This wasn't about money. This was about power. He'd used silence the same way some use fists, to control, to diminish, to keep me in my place. The shame from last night, it started to transform into something else, something steady. My hands stopped shaking. He didn't expect I'd ever find this. He didn't think I'd look. And now I had something. I printed the contract and slid it into a manila folder, careful, like I was handling evidence. I placed it on my desk. It sat there like a quiet threat, not flashy, but loaded. Miles had no idea what he'd just handed me. I texted him a short reply. "Thanks. Please keep this confidential for now. It's a family matter." He responded with a polite acknowledgement. I picked up my phone one more time and played Jasper's voicemail again. This time, I didn't flinch. I didn't feel small. I felt clear. Dad's words echoed like a whisper. "You belong here." I opened my laptop, started a new document, titled it Next Moves. I didn't know where this would lead yet. But I knew this much. It was time to stop reacting. It was time to start moving. After my call with Miles, the world didn't look the same. I moved through the motions, court prep, phone calls, groceries, but everything felt like static around one clear question. How long had Jasper known? Back at home, I pulled out a storage bin from the back of my closet. It smelled faintly of dust and cedar, old tax returns, yellowing photos, Dad's notebooks. One of them was a legal pad, half-used, with his neat handwriting trailing off near the end. As I flipped through it, something slipped out from between the pages. A postcard. My fingers paused. The logo in the corner was unmistakable. North Ridge Country Club, embossed, dated 12 years ago. Welcome, Zadie. We look forward to seeing you at North Ridge. I sat down slowly, staring at the card like it might vanish. It had never been opened, just tucked away, like it didn't matter. Or worse, like someone didn't want me to see it. I thought of Jasper's laughter at that dinner table. The way he delivered that line about the membership fee, like a punch wrapped in ribbon. It wasn't just about money. It wasn't even just about power. It was about erasure, about removing me from the narrative of who Dad believed I was and where I belonged. I needed someone who knew Dad the way he really was, someone outside of Jasper's orbit. I called Harold Kinney. We met at a small cafe in Midtown. Harold looked older than I remembered, but his smile was the same, gentle, worn, sincere. He hugged me like a niece he hadn't seen in too long. Over coffee, we talked about the weather, his grandkids, the usual. I eased into it. Then I brought up the club, lightly, cautiously. He tilted his head. Didn't Jasper tell you? Your dad had that all arranged for you. I didn't flinch. I remember something about it, but it never came through. He chuckled, sipped his tea. Jasper picked up the welcome packet himself. Came by the office after your father's funeral. Said you were busy, or not interested. I figured that was that. His words landed like weights. Not accusations, just observations. He wasn't trying to hurt me. But every sentence cut deeper. I smiled, nodded, thanked him for his time. He offered to pay. I insisted. As I stepped back out into the afternoon light, my legs felt strange, like they belonged to someone else. I walked without purpose for almost an hour, just letting the noise of the city drown out the noise in my head. Jasper didn't just sideline me, he stole something sacred. He let me believe, for over a decade, that I wasn't part of Dad's legacy, that I was somehow less. And all that time, I was exactly where Dad intended me to be. He just made sure I never knew. By the time I got home, I was numb. I sat at the kitchen table and opened my journal. When they hide the truth from you, I wrote, they rob more than rights. They rob your sense of reality. And that's what it felt like. Like the ground I'd been standing on all these years had never been solid. I'd blamed myself for not measuring up, for not fitting in. But it had all been by design. His design. I printed the email from Miles, the scan of the postcard, and jotted down Harold's quote, word for word. I labeled a folder, in case of confrontation. Then I placed it in my home safe, next to my passport and birth certificate. Important documents, ones that prove who you are. I wasn't ready to call Jasper, not yet. I wasn't going to scream or accuse or demand. I was going to be ready. That night, I called Miles again. Requested a formal meeting at the club. I asked specifically that it be private. No Jasper, no noise, just me. And the truth that had been kept from me for too long. The letter arrived mid-morning, crisp and official. You are invited to attend a special board session at Lakeside Country Club, Thursday at 4:00 p.m. Zadie Ashcroft, honorary guest. Honorary, not member. That word burned like acid under my skin. I sat down at my desk and laid out everything. The postcard from Dad, the scanned contract with his unmistakable signature, the handwritten note from Harold. I clipped them together, tucked them into a slim leather folder, and slid it into my briefcase. I wasn't walking in to ask for anything. I was walking in to confront a lie. I arrived 15 minutes early. The place smelled like polished wood and entitlement. Wade and Marla were already there, seated stiffly across from each other. Wade didn't look up when I entered. Marla offered a thin smile that never touched her eyes. The boardroom was just as I remembered from childhood banquets. Long oak table, too many chairs, framed oil portraits of people who never looked like me. Dorian, the current club manager, called the meeting to order. Today's purpose, he said, is to clarify Ms. Ashcroft's membership status. My palms were damp. I clasped them beneath the table, grounding myself. I wasn't nervous. I was ready. Wade was the first to speak. He suggested tabling part of the agenda. Marla nodded, her lips pursed. Dorian ignored them and read aloud. There was an amendment to the original contract. It reassigned the founding sponsorship to internal reserves. My heart pounded in my ears. "Excuse me," I said, voice steady. "Who authorized that?" Wade shifted. "It was a board decision at the time." "At what time?" I asked. "Because my father never discussed this with me." Marla leaned in. "We believed it would be better for club coherence, given the family dynamics." Their words hung heavy in the room, sanitized cruelty, dressed in decorum. I reached into my briefcase and pulled out my folder. "These," I said, laying copies in front of them, "are the original membership documents. Signed, sealed, filed." I passed one to Dorian. His eyes widened as he scanned the page. "This contradicts our current registry," he murmured. "No," I corrected. "Your registry was altered. These were never lost. They were buried." Gasps echoed around the table. I took a breath. "And here," I added, placing the postcard in the center, "is the welcome note from 12 years ago, never mailed, found hidden in my father's belongings." Wade fumbled for words. "Zadie." I cut him off. "There's also a document in the club's records, a change signed solely by Jasper, posthumously, no board signatures, no vote." Dorian's face changed. Several members exchanged hushed glances. One cleared his throat but said nothing. "I'm not here to fight," I continued. "I'm here to correct a wrong." I pushed forward a typed letter, firm and direct. "This is a formal demand for reinstatement of my full founding membership, voting rights, club access, and public acknowledgement. I will not accept honorary anything." Wade's voice tightened. "That's a bit aggressive." "No," I replied, cool and sharp. "It's truth. And truth only feels aggressive when it threatens comfort." Silence. Then whispers. Marla shifted uncomfortably. Someone coughed. Dorian nodded slowly, then turned to the others. "We'll need to review this further." "I'm sure you will," I said, rising. "Take all the time you need. In the meantime," I placed a second envelope on the table. "This is a formal withdrawal letter. Effective immediately, I'm stepping away from all club engagement until this board can operate with full transparency." Eyes widened. The room rippled with unease. I walked to the door, felt Wade's stare on my back. I didn't turn around. Back in my car, I sat in stillness, hands on the wheel, my breath steady, no tears, just the weight of what had happened and what was coming next. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt clear. This wasn't revenge. This was reclaiming a space I never should have been denied. I glanced at the folder beside me, my insurance policy, my truth. I closed my eyes and whispered, "It's just the beginning." The text came Saturday night, short, casual, too casual. "Brunch tomorrow, just family, let's reset." Jasper didn't do resets. He did moves, calculated ones. And after what happened at the board meeting, I knew this wasn't brunch. It was bait. Still, I said yes. I pulled into the driveway just before noon. His estate looked like something out of a real estate magazine. Flawless hedges, fresh flowers lining the path, that kind of showy charm that says, "Nothing bad ever happens here." Jazz played low from hidden speakers. Round tables were set up on the lawn with crisp white linen and centerpieces that probably cost more than my month's rent. Marla and Wade were already seated, dressed like they'd just come from church. She wore that permanent half-smile like always. Wade raised his glass but didn't say much. No surprise. A staff member walked me to a seat, not just any seat, the farthest one from Jasper. Isolated. Deliberate. I sat, smoothed my napkin over my lap, and looked around. Every smile on that patio had a price tag attached. Jasper finally stepped out, all warmth and white linen, calling my name like we were just picking up an old conversation. He asked about my health, my work, even made some joke about the Zadie fire from back in the day. I didn't laugh. Then, midway through a story about our family's 4th of July trips, he reached beneath the table and slid a manila envelope toward me like it was dessert. "A goodwill gesture," he said, sipping from his mimosa. I opened it. Inside was a settlement proposal. Cash, more than I expected. But in exchange, I'd sign away any claims to the club. Silence, sealed and bought. Let's keep family out of courtrooms and boardrooms, shall we? The table went quiet. Wade looked down. Marla, ever the actress, clucked softly. These things get so draining, don't they? It was all a show. Jasper played the calm patriarch. But underneath, I could feel it. The tightness in his jaw, the threat in his smoothness. I set the envelope down slowly. No reaction, no smile. Then I asked, was hiding my membership a family decision? Or just yours? He didn't flinch, just tilted his head and shrugged. What's done is done. I nodded. You've spent a lifetime telling me I didn't belong. Now that I've stood up, you're afraid I might not sit back down. Wade mumbled. Zadie, come on. Let's move forward. I stood, picked up the envelope, looked at all three of them. I didn't come here to negotiate, I said. I came to remind you. I know exactly who I am now. And then I made sure they knew I wasn't bluffing. I stayed standing. Let the silence stretch. Let their eyes shift. You erased my name. You altered documents. You played the long game, betting I wouldn't figure it out. But I did. Every bit of it. I saw the twitch in Marla's fingers, the way Wade clenched his napkin. My mother once said, power built on silence shatters loudest when truth speaks. And I was done being quiet. I will speak in courtrooms. I will speak in boardrooms. And yes, at this brunch table too. If you ever try to bury me again, you better make sure I'm dead. Because next time, I won't walk out. I'll rise louder, and I won't come alone. The fear didn't scream, it flickered. That's the thing about cowards. They know how to hide it, but I saw it. I placed the envelope back on the table, turned, walked. No rush, no glance back. The drive home felt like a release. Quiet, my hands steady on the wheel. No music, just thoughts. They thought I'd fold. Again. But something shifted today. Not in them, in me. I pulled into my driveway just before 2. Sun still high, the weight of the moment still sitting on my shoulders. I stepped inside, locked the door, and poured myself a glass of water. Then I sat at the kitchen table, pulled out my journal, and wrote one line. Let them smile. I know what it's hiding now. I woke up to a sound I didn't recognize at first, the constant buzzing of my phone. It wasn't an alarm. It wasn't a reminder. It was a storm of notifications, texts from people I hadn't spoken to in years, coworkers, even a stranger who'd found my email online. Their words blurred together. Are you okay? Saw the article. Thought you should know. My thumb hovered over the screen before I opened the link. My heart sank. Local news headline, Estranged daughter's false claims disputed by family sources. Below it, a grainy photo of me at some private event, mid-step, mid-blink, stripped of context and dignity. Anonymous insiders claimed I'd fabricated the entire membership story for money. By the time I'd reached the end of the article, it had already been shared hundreds of times. Facebook groups buzzed. Comments from old club members scrolled past my eyes. We always knew she was unstable. Some people will do anything for attention. My chest tightened. This wasn't a family disagreement anymore. This was a public execution of my name. I forced myself to read every line. The byline belonged to a journalist who churned out fluff pieces about Lakeside Club charity events. Not a real reporter. I opened another tab, cross-referencing shares and likes. Wade's fingerprints were everywhere. Retweets, burner accounts, subtle pushes from his digital shadow. Marla, not to be outdone, had posted a pastel quote on Instagram. Family is patience, some lack it. Thousands of likes, a dagger disguised as wisdom. The settlement envelope from brunch flashed in my mind. This was leverage. They wanted me discredited, isolated, then cornered into silence. My hands trembled, but my head cleared. They're trying to bury me alive before I can speak, I whispered into the empty room. I called Harold, my father's old lawyer friend. My voice stayed level even as my pulse pounded. They're moving fast, I told him. He didn't flinch. Document everything, he said. Every post, every link. Don't give them a reaction yet. I hung up and got to work. Screenshots, archived articles, IP traces from suspicious emails. Every keystroke felt like a small reclaiming of control. I drafted a public statement but stopped before posting. They wanted me to explode, to fit their narrative of an emotional troublemaker. Instead, I chose silence. But this time, silence was loaded. Then the email arrived. Subject: For your eyes only. No name. Just a few words from someone inside the club saying they'd seen Wade pressuring staff to lose certain documents. Attached was a blurry photo of an internal memo ordering deletion of duplicate records, mine. I stared at it, my breath catching. Proof. A thread to pull. My hands shook as I typed a careful reply, thanking them, promising confidentiality. I hit send, sat back, and exhaled slowly. In their rush to discredit me, they'd left their own trail of evidence. That night, I opened my journal and wrote, "When they attack you for telling the truth, you're closer to the core than ever." I compiled everything into a secure folder labeled Phase 2. Screenshots, emails, the memo, locked away, ready. Then I called a friend in local PR. I kept my voice low. "How do you neutralize a smear without going public yet?" "You're not fighting them," she said. "You're narrating your own story. Don't hand them your script." Her words steadied me. They thought they were tightening the noose. They didn't realize I was already loosening it. I decided on my next move. I'd attend the upcoming club fundraiser unannounced. Walk in quiet. Walk out with proof. As I closed my laptop, the fear that had been gnawing at me all day shifted into something sharper: anticipation. "They think they're playing chess," I whispered. "They forgot I know the board." By the time I stepped out of the car at Lakeside, the sky had begun its slow fade into late afternoon amber. I tightened my coat, not from the chill, but from the weight of what I knew I'd walk into. This wasn't just another fundraiser, it was the stage they'd picked to finish what they started. I passed the valet, eyes lowered, the name tag reading Travis. He glanced at me, then quickly away. That was the first whisper, not out loud, but in the shift of his stance. I heard more as I walked past the garden walkway toward the event entrance. "She's delusional," one woman murmured, pretending to check her phone. "Claims she built that wing." Another snickered. "I thought that was Wade's idea, or his family's fund." Then it happened. A waiter fumbled a glossy brochure near the hedge. I bent to help him, but the cover caught my eye. "Lakeside Heritage, honoring our benefactors." Inside was a section on the club's expansion. My heart stalled. A photo of the South Wing. The plaque shown beneath it read, "Ashcroft Legacy Fund, Wade Marla." Not my name, not a whisper of it. I kept walking, shoulders square, eyes forward. The path curved along the wall of donor plaques, brass, marble, even one inlaid with mother of pearl. I stopped at the last one, the newest, right where my work should have lived. Ashcroft Legacy Fund. I touched the edge. The engraving was crisp, clean, erased. I didn't hear her footsteps, but I felt her presence. Marla. She stepped up beside me like she had every right. "We thought it looked cleaner this way," she said, too casual. I turned. Met her eyes. "You thought means you erased." She blinked, barely flinched. "Don't make this bigger than it is, Zadie." I smiled. It wasn't kind. "I already have." She caught it, the meaning beneath the words, the knowledge that I wasn't bluffing anymore. Her pupils tightened. That was enough. A couple nearby glanced at us, not close enough to hear, but close enough to notice. The air crackled, a quiet, charged silence. I walked on. A garden attendant passed me, muttering to another staffer just loud enough to sting. "You heard. She's lying about designing that wing." I stopped, turned, and locked eyes with him. Lawsuit, public records, archived plans, all ready to speak for me. The words didn't shake. They cut through. Silence. Then the digital noise surged. Phones buzzed. Someone across the lawn snapped a picture. Guests murmured. Posts flew up. One showed me standing by the plaque. The caption read, "Drama at the club fundraiser." I didn't flinch. I wouldn't give them that. I breathed, in, out, Arms crossed, spine straight. Then, a shift. From behind, a voice. Actually, that wing's design. Zadie led it. I was there. I turned. Lennox. He stepped between me and the gossipers, voice calm but firm. Another guest tried to interject, and Nola, bless her, added, "There's more in that blueprint than names. There's proof." The circle shifted, eyes turned, some whispered, but this time, not against me. Marla stood a few paces off, chin lifted but her mouth set tight. I saw it then. Her grip on the story was slipping. I looked at Lennox. He didn't say more. Didn't have to. I nodded. Silent thanks. The wind changed, slight, but I felt it. By the time I left the garden path, dusk had settled in. The lights around the club flickered on, soft glows over shadows that had grown all day. I didn't rush. I didn't hide. Back in my car, I opened the folder marked Phase 2. Press release drafts, photos, original blueprints. I wrote in my journal on the passenger seat, the pen firm in my hand. They tried to erase my name in plain sight. They forgot I built the blueprint. My reflection in the rearview mirror didn't flinch anymore. Tomorrow, I would speak. But tonight, I watched. The storm came just after dawn. Spring thunder, slow and deliberate, like the sky knew something was about to crack open. I sat at the edge of the bed, coffee cooling in my hand. The folder labeled Phase 2 spread out on the nightstand. Every document, photo, email. I went over them again. Not for doubt. For precision. This wasn't about just being right anymore. It was about being undeniable. Around mid-morning, I called Dorian. Kept it light. Any chance I could peek into the archives? I'm chasing down some old renderings. He hesitated. Too long. Then said, "Let me see what's possible." I could hear it in his tone. He knew what I was really after. By the time I arrived at Lakeside, the wind had picked up, and the whole building seemed to hum with tension. A junior admin walked me back through a maze of service hallways to a narrow door behind the club's old office wing. Inside, dust, metal filing cabinets, yellowed folders. My breath caught, not from dust, but from something deeper. My hands moved, one drawer after another, scanning dates and labels, until I saw it. Folder marked, Renovation Budgets 2018. Wrong category. Right folder. Inside, line items, estimates. And at the bottom, stapled to a packet, floor plans. My signature. Z. Ashcroft Draft 3, Community Wing. Time-stamped 3 months before Wade's firm got the contract. Tucked into the corner, a post-it, slightly faded, a scrawl in someone else's hand. Moved to private fund to protect branding. I stared. Not because I was surprised, but because even after everything, part of me had needed to see it. They didn't just take credit. They designed the cover-up. I scanned every page, photographed twice, backed up everything onto the cloud in 2 drives. Evidence means nothing if it's not protected. I didn't leave right away. Just sat on the floor beside a rusted cabinet, folder open across my lap. By early evening, back at my place, the sky still bruised with storm clouds, my burner phone buzzed. Same voice as before. Quiet. Nervous. "You didn't hear it from me," they said. But the board knew. All of them. It was your design. Always was. I didn't speak. They added, "They buried it to avoid the family fallout. But that fallout already happened. Might as well tell the truth now." I asked why they were calling again. They paused, then, "They're voting tomorrow to rename the wing officially under Wade's name. Behind closed doors." My hand tightened around the phone. "Thank you," I said quietly. I meant it, but my mind was already moving. No more waiting. I opened my laptop, created a new folder. Named it, The Truth of the Walls. I didn't write an exposé, no fire, no rant. I wrote a message. This isn't about credit, it's about erasure. I laid out the plans, the signatures, emails with timestamps, photos of the construction. A voiceover, recorded in one take. When women build, the world notices, eventually. That was enough. I sent it to an old contact. a journalist who'd once written about my volunteer work in East Atlanta, back when no one cared who I was related to, attached the video, hit send. 11:59 p.m. Then I sat in silence. No music, no lights, just the quiet of a home I'd reclaimed. By sunrise, my phone hadn't stopped vibrating. Mentions, messages, texts from board members, old club friends, people I hadn't spoken to in years. Some apologized, some danced around it. Some said nothing, which told me everything. Wade's name trended online, not for golf tournaments or family legacies, for silence, for theft, for omission. At 10:07 a.m., an email came from Dorian. Subject line, bored in chaos, body. They want to talk, privately. I didn't reply, just smiled. Finally, they weren't ignoring me, but I wasn't coming quietly. I didn't wear black. I didn't wear red. Just a navy blouse, soft slacks, and flats that didn't make a sound on the polished tile of the conference room. No power play, no dramatics, just presence. The board sat in a semicircle, and as I walked in, they hushed. Not because they had anything to hide anymore, but because the air shifted. This wasn't the same Zadie they dismissed. I didn't need to speak to be heard. The man who had once whispered the truth now stood, cleared his throat. "We have failed a member of our own," he said, eyes steady, voice firm. Then, projected behind him, my drawings. Clear. Labeled. Time-stamped. Z. Ashcroft. Community Wing Design. One by one, they nodded, some apologizing with practiced polish. Others looked me in the eye and meant it. I didn't need to sort the sincere from the strategic. I already knew who was who. I stepped forward. "This was never about revenge," I said. "It's about restoration." And I sat down. They voted unanimously to correct the record. Official, permanent, no press release, no grand gesture, just acknowledgement. And sometimes, that's all a wound needs to start closing. Later that day, I got a call from a club admin. Short message. "Wade's withdrawn his membership, effective immediately." No email, no phone call, no confrontation. He just disappeared. A part of me wanted that final scene, that face-to-face, the apology, maybe, the denial, more likely. But he gave me nothing. And strangely, that was its own kind of answer. Maya Angelou once said, "When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time." He'd shown me over and over. I just hadn't wanted to look. I didn't chase his goodbye. Didn't need to. Closure wasn't a slammed door. It was the quiet sound of a chair left unfilled. A few weeks later, the club organized a small ceremony. No cameras, just community. They asked me to speak. I didn't talk about what happened. I talked about what could happen next. "I'm grateful," I said, "for those who stood up and for those who finally learned to listen." Afterward, people shared their own stories. One woman, gray hair, tears in her eyes, came up and took my hands. "You didn't just fight for you," she whispered. "You fought for all of us." That moment etched deeper than any title or plaque. I walked past the framed blueprint they'd hung in the hall. My signature. My name. Right where it belonged. Later that night, I returned to my workspace. Clean desk. Open sketch pad. Two girls from the neighborhood, both no taller than my hip, sat across from me, eyes wide. "Can we try drawing too?" one asked. "Of course," I smiled. "This table's for builders." That night, in my journal, I wrote, "Maybe justice isn't loud. Maybe it's consistent." I played the video I had released, just once more. Not to dwell, but to remember. My voice didn't sound angry. It sounded grounded. I left it up. Not as proof, as pride. Time passed. I wasn't keeping score anymore, just building again, my way. A few months on, I got invited to speak at a women's architecture symposium. When I walked on stage, I wasn't just an architect. I was a survivor of silence, and I didn't lecture. I spoke plain. "You don't need permission to be real," I said. "Just evidence that you never stopped trying." Some nodded, some cried. All understood. I walked off stage not to applause, but to peace. And as I packed up my notes, a simple thought lingered. Maybe it was never about proving anything, just remembering who I was all along.